Throughout its 21 years of life, the Nintendo DS has amassed quite the collection of lost media. This comes in the form of cancelled games, unidentified consoles, even games that were banned for being illegal. And today, I wanted to cover all of these obscure topics in the classic Iceberg chart format. Layer 1 contains the more surface-level pieces of lost media, and as we progress further down, the entries become more strange, obscure, and even disturbing. Make sure to like and subscribe, and now, let us begin with Layer 1 of the DS Lost Media Iceberg. Halo DS. Halo DS was an unreleased, unsolicited version of Bungie's Halo for the Nintendo DS. The first ever public mention of this game was on January 4th of 2007, when IGN's Matt Casamassina made a blog post claiming to have played Halo DS. He claimed that the game was completely up and running and fully playable, although it never released. On July 18th of the same year, Bungie employees Frank O'Connor and Brian Gerard said that there has never been an officially funded or sanctioned development of any sort of Halo DS game, and that guy over at IGN likely played an unsolicited prototype pitched to Nintendo. This statement from Bungie employees caused people to accuse Matt and IGN of lying about the existence of the game, to which he replied on October 2nd with a follow-up blog post. He stated that the game was real and that it was created by a real development studio with a very big publisher, as well as releasing screenshots and gameplay videos of this game. In one of the videos, Matt is seen playing the game alongside Mark Bozon, who states that it was created by a AAA publisher. It was later confirmed that N-Space was the team responsible for the Halo DS game. For reference, N-Space worked on some of the DS Call of Duty titles, so them working on a Halo DS prototype isn't too far-fetched. It was stated that the game supported 6-player multiplayer, had drivable vehicles like the Warthog, as well as NPC enemies. The demo was reportedly developed in 3 months by a team of 5 developers. Before being cancelled, the pitch was approved by both Bungie and Microsoft, but ultimately its rejection by Nintendo was what caused it to go unreleased. As of 2026, we still cannot play this game as no ROM has been available to the public, and it's unknown if anyone still has it in their possession today. Still crazy to think that Halo was really close to releasing on the Nintendo DS. Mario Motors. Mario Motors was a planned Nintendo DS spin-off to the Mario Kart series. The game was mainly the work of Japanese game designer Yuji Saito, who previously created games such as Seaman, Sim Tower, and Odama. At the Reboot Develop Conference 2018, Yuji Saito revealed for the first time ever a cancelled game for the Nintendo DS called Mario Motors. On stage, Saito talked about the development and story of how the game was first conceived. So, in the early 2000s, Saito was very good friends with Shigeru Miyamoto and the former president of Nintendo, Satoru Iwata. The three would usually meet up at cafes and whatnot and chat over tea, usually about game ideas. At one such meeting, Saito was asked by Iwata what he was interested in lately, and he answered with sculpting chunks of metal. Saito then explained his crazy idea to Iwata and Miyamoto as they sat in silence. In the end, both Iwata and Miyamoto said that the project sounded interesting and said that they could give it a try. The development of this title is largely unknown, as well as the reason for the game's cancellation, as Saito said he couldn't give an exact reason why. The main concept of Mario Motors was that the player could build engines and presumably other parts of vehicles out of chunks of metal. For example, a player could shave and sculpt metal into a cylinder, which could then be added to an engine. There was also a plan to add blowing into the DS mic as a part of the game that teaches about acceleration, but that was scrapped because of the fear of a child losing breath. Despite being considered a part of the Mario Kart series, it's unknown how much of the game revolved around racing, as no tracks were ever announced and only 2 characters were shown off in concept art. The characters shown were Mario and an unknown elderly scientist character. This presentation is the only reason we ever knew of this game's existence, and it's very unlikely that any more information will turn up in the future. Metroid Dread. I know, you may be thinking, hey, didn't Metroid Dread actually release? That's a Switch game, right? And to that I'd say yes, Metroid Dread is an officially released Nintendo Switch title, but what you may not know about this game is that it was originally planned to release 20 years prior in 2006 for the Nintendo DS. That is right, Metroid Dread was originally conceived around 2005 for the DS as a direct sequel to Metroid Fusion. The core idea was to push the fear introduced by Fusion's SA-X enemy even further by having the player relentlessly pursued by an unstoppable enemy, creating a constant sense of dread. Although the DS version was never shown publicly, its existence became widely rumored after a leaked E3 2005 document listed the game among upcoming DS titles. Despite reports from gaming media and even a mention in official Nintendo magazine from 2006, complete with a tentative November release date, the game failed to appear at major events like E3. Speculation intensified in 2007 when scan logs in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption referenced a failed Metroid Project Dread, leading many to believe that the DS game had been cancelled. Nintendo later denied this interpretation, stating that the reference was coincidental. Development would continue quietly until around 2009, when a prototype was planned internally but ultimately shelved after the director was dissatisfied. This DS prototype reportedly used sprite-based graphics similar to Metroid Fusion, with gameplay on the top screen and an interactive map on the bottom. No builds, ROMs, or screenshots of this version have ever surfaced, and its existence is only known through these insider accounts and press mentions. While some journalists claim to have seen a script or synopsis, little concrete information remains, making the DS version of Metroid Dread lost media. Otana no Ona no Yuranai Techo. Otana no Ona no Yuranai Techo, roughly translating to Fortune-Telling Notebook for Adult Women, was an unreleased DS title that appears to have been in development during the late 2000s. Based on its title, it was designed as a fortune-telling and daily planner-style application aimed specifically at adult women. What makes it notable today, though, is that it actually had a built-in Mii maker. Granted, they weren't calling them Miis just yet, but this idea of a character creation tool was one that Nintendo experimented with a lot prior to 2006. You can learn all about it in my previous video. And out of all of these early Mii makers, this is the one that most highly resembled the Wii's Mii channel. Although no information regarding the gameplay has been released to the public, some interviews seem to indicate that the gameplay aspect of this title wasn't fully developed before the game's cancellation. Regarding the development of the game, Yoshio Sakamoto stated, "We can make avatars that looked really similar, and we kept making a variety of faces. And then we thought, what should we do with this? I wasn't sure what to do, so I showed it to Mr. Iwata. Mr. Iwata, isn't this interesting?" is what I said. Then he said something like, And then he said, "This seems like something Mr. Miyamoto would be excited about." So we left that project to Mr. Iwata and I had forgotten about it. Then, one day, all of a sudden I was called up. I went in nervous, thinking that maybe I had done something wrong. But then I was told that they wanted to use this idea for the Mii editor in the Wii. Then, the main members of the team joined the Wii team in order to create the Mii channel. Sadly, all that we have regarding this cancelled game is like 10 seconds of footage and a few screenshots. The character models and animations were also found in the files of Tomodachi Collection, which is pretty neat. Nintendo Fan Network. The Nintendo Fan Network was an interactive service created by Nintendo in partnership with the baseball team, the Seattle Mariners. This DS app launched exclusively at T-Mobile Park in 2007. Originally designed as a way to enhance the in-stadium experience, the service let fans access real-time baseball content and utilities on their DS or DS Lite using the ballpark's dedicated Wi-Fi network. You could view live player statistics, league standings, scores from other MLB games, play trivia and minigames, watch video feeds of the live action, and even order food and beverages for delivery to your seat directly through the handheld. Initially, the service cost a small fee of about $5 per game, but it ultimately became free for attendees in 2008. With the release of the Nintendo DSi, the Fan Network was updated to make use of the newer hardware's capabilities and distribution model. Unlike the original DS version, which had to be temporarily downloaded onto the system and often deleted on power off, the DSi allowed the application to be downloaded and saved directly from the DSi shop as a dedicated app. Nintendo even promoted the DSi version by offering free DSi rentals to early game attendees so fans could try the service without owning the hardware. The core functions remained the same, stats, minigames, and food ordering, but the DSi version just made it way more convenient. The Fan Network continued to operate through the DS, DSi, and later Nintendo 3DS hardwares for several years. However, the service was ultimately discontinued sometime around the mid-2010s, as mobile tech and demand for such obscure applications just declined. The DSi app was removed from the DSi shop upon its closure, and the 3DS eShop delisted it at a later unspecified date. Not only is the Nintendo Fan Network inaccessible nowadays, but a lot of the content that was distributed through this service is also largely unknown. Like, it was stated that there were minigames which could be played through the app.
Wait, how about the games? Did you try the games yet?
Those are really cool too.
But there's no footage of any of these games, so we don't even really know what these looked like. The Fan Network has always piqued my interest. I mean, it just sounds absurd, like you could actually order alcohol off your DS at one point. PokePark DS Download Play. On March 18, 2005, a temporary theme park opened in the Nakamura ward of Nagoya, Japan, devoted entirely to Pokemon. This theme park was called the PokePark. Placed inside this park were DS download play stations where players could download a game to their Nintendo DS via download play. That game was titled PokePark Siri Taikai DS. In this game, the player visits several locations on a river to fish for and catch water-type Pokemon. The DS download play stations had leaderboards where high scores would be sent to and displayed. However, due to the nature of DS download play, the game was temporary and deleted from the DS's system memory when the system was shut off. No ROM dumps of either the actual game or the DS download play station that allows players to download it are known to exist, but a user named Tim Sherwagen has uploaded 2 gameplay videos of the game, which suggests that he may have some sort of ROM dump on his hands. In addition to the original version made available at PokePark 2005, 3 other versions were made. From July 17th to September 25th of 2005, the game was distributed at Pokemon Center stores in Japan. This version had a yellow Pokemon Center banner on the title screen. A 3rd version was distributed at Pokemon Festa event locations on weekends between July 17th to August 21st, 2005, with a red Pokemon Festa banner on the title screen. The final variant was the coolest in my opinion, being distributed at PokePark 2006 in Taiwan. This version is fully localized into Chinese. Mean Girls DS. Mean Girls DS is a video game made for the Nintendo DS, intended as a tie-in for the 2004 film of the same name. The game was published by 505 Games, and was set to be released in Europe on September 11, 2009. A United States release was scheduled for April 20, 2010, but both were cancelled at the last minute. For unknown reasons, the game went missing digitally and physically since its release for a long time, and no copies were accounted for. Though the plot was presumably similar to the movie in that the player acts as a new student at a high school. A Kotaku article described the game as being some kind of puzzle quest ripoff, which would make it similar to its PC counterpart, Mean Girls High School Showdown. However, according to the ESRB, it was an adventure game where the player interacts with characters through text-based conversations. It appears that this game was a big financial failure and very few copies were printed. 505 announced 2 other movie tie-in games, those being the Pretty in Pink and Clueless games, although Pretty in Pink was made PC download only, and Clueless would have the same fate as Mean Girls, being cancelled entirely. On May 26th of 2021, YouTuber Ray Mona revealed via Twitter that she had come into possession of a ROM of the game and announced a documentary video detailing how she obtained it. She would go on to release a full playthrough of the Mean Girls DS game onto her channel, proving the suspicion that this game was nothing more than a buggy and lazily put together minigame collection. So yes, this is a case of found lost media, but the mystery behind this game was too iconic not to include in the video. Sonic DS. Upon the release of the Nintendo DS in 2004, Sega was planning to release a Sonic the Hedgehog game for the new system. At E3 2004, they showed off a tech demo titled Sonic DS. It appeared to be a simple 3D platformer featuring Sonic. The level was largely flat, and the game was controlled by quickly moving the stylus to the left and right of the touchscreen, making Sonic run, and you would run faster depending on the speed of your stylus movements. Touching the top of the screen caused Sonic to jump. It's unknown if it was a mere tech demo or if Sega actually intended to develop an entire game based on this concept, but nothing would ever come of this demo. Sonic's first appearance on the Nintendo DS ended up being in Sonic Rush, a 2D platformer. This 3D Sonic demo has never resurfaced, though a fake ROM was distributed at one point via torrent. Raid Over the River. Raid Over the River was a shoot-'em-up game in development for the DS in 2006 by the company Nebris Studios. The game was cancelled due to the studio closing down in 2010 before they had found a publisher. In 2007, YouTuber Wujo Sewi uploaded gameplay footage from an unknown build of this title. It's unknown where they had gotten a copy of the game from, whether this was played at a convention, or if they were a developer of the game. Raid Over the River would have taken place during various time periods, including ancient Greece, World War II, the Cold War, the United States in 2006, Germany in the at the time future year of 2018, and finally, Japan in the future. The vehicles in this game would have matched each time period too. For example, there was biplanes for World War II, sci-fi jet planes for future years, and even dragons. The game would also have had features specific to the DS, such as DS download play for co-op, voice commands, and special attacks using the touchscreen. It's unknown how much of this game was completed before it was cancelled. Despite the mysterious footage appearing on YouTube in 2007, no build of the game has surfaced, and this information is all that's really known about Raid Over the River. Crazy Frog Collectible Faces. Crazy Frog Collectible Faces was a cancelled Nintendo DS puzzle game developed by Cypron Studios, and based on the mid-2000s CGI character Crazy Frog. It was reportedly meant to be published by the now-defunct Mercury Games, which had also handled other Crazy Frog titles, such as Crazy Frog Collectibles Art School, making Faces effectively a sequel. The only known gameplay description comes from an archived Cypron Studios webpage, which described it as a funny puzzle game. While no detailed mechanics were officially documented, it was allegedly a matching-style puzzle game where players would select a face and had to find identical ones, similar in concept to the Wanted minigame from Super Mario 64 DS. Beyond that brief summary, no screenshots, videos, or ROMs have surfaced publicly. In 2019, a former developer stated via email that Mercury Games went bankrupt in 2008 and that the developers were not paid, strongly implying that the game was cancelled. Evidence suggests that the game was later reworked into Crazy Chibo Puzzle Party for DSiWare, as an icon referencing collectible faces exists within that game's files. Pikachu. At E3 2004, wanting to show off their new handheld game console's features, Nintendo showcased a DS tech demo starring Pikachu. Showing off the console's graphical capabilities, microphone, and touchscreen, the player could engage in various activities with a 3D model of Pikachu, which included grabbing and stretching its body parts, tracing a picture with the stylus, using the stylus to scratch off scratch cards, playing a guitar and xylophone, and measuring Magikarp that Pikachu caught. The demo has not resurfaced, just like the other DS tech demos from this era. However, the 3D model of Pikachu as well as the pulling features were reused for the game Pokémon Dash, released in Japan later that year. Burnout Freestyle. Burnout Freestyle is a cancelled racing game intended for the Nintendo Wii and DS. It was developed by Criterion Games and was said to be published by EA as the first Nintendo-exclusive Burnout title, before its development was shelved in favor of Criterion working on Need for Speed games. Burnout Freestyle would become the first in the series to receive a Wii release, while also being the second DS title. Burnout Freestyle wasn't really shown too much to the public before being quietly cancelled by December 2010. However, the game's existence was publicly confirmed when EA outsourced manager Paul Dibdin provided information about the game and DS screenshots on his website. Ultimately, no build of Burnout Freestyle has been publicly released, but these screenshots indicate that the game had received some development prior to being shelved, but are the only viewable remnants of the title. No content from the Wii version has ever leaked. Mario's Face. Mario's Face was another DS tech demo that was developed by Nintendo EAD and shown off at E3 2004 to display the capabilities of the system. The player could either select Mario or Wario, and then use the stylus on the touchscreen to grab parts of their faces and pull and stretch them, similar to the Super Mario 64 title screen. This feature was eventually put into Super Mario 64 DS, albeit in a far simpler form. This Mario's Face demo hasn't been showed since its E3 presentation and has not been dumped online. Boo Haunt. Boo Haunt is a cancelled Boo game pitched by the company Retro Studios for the Nintendo DS. Possibly known as the Haunt Project, in this game, players would take on the role of a young Boo, freshly graduated in the Haunt University. In these images, you can see a Boo professor teaching his students about some sort of magic cauldron. The Boo protagonist would have been chosen to be dipped into it for some reason, possibly to give him new powers. Concept art shows this Boo in different poses, as if it could be stretched and moved around like in Kirby Canvas Curse. The only media surrounding this game that exists is concept art and drawings, some of which are kinda strange, such as this one depicting crucifixion. Geist DS. The original Geist was a first-person adventure game developed by N-Space and published by Nintendo in 2005 for the GameCube. In this game, you play as the spirit of a dead protagonist who can interact with the physical world through possession of things, animals, and human beings. The game had an interesting gameplay mechanic in which you had to scare NPCs before being able to possess them, as well as many clever puzzles revolving around your possession ability. A Nintendo DS port or sequel, it's unknown which, was in development at N-Space in the mid to late 2000s, but in the end the project was cancelled, possibly because of low sales and mixed reviews for the GameCube version. While the game was never officially announced and it was quietly cancelled with no media ever shown to the public, fans of the original game actually found some early footage of Geist DS, which looks pretty cool. It's quite eerie and the graphics aren't too impressive, but then again this was the DS. I'm quite a fan of this game's visual direction. I like the liminal feel of all these environments. Sucks that this is all that's really available regarding this game. Catch of the Day. Catch of the Day is a cancelled fishing game developed by EA that was planned to release on the Nintendo Wii and DS around June 2008. The game was far in development around this time until it was cancelled for unknown reasons. The game's first public appearance was on January 16th of 2008, where on a list Nintendo publicly released of upcoming games, the title Catch of the Day by EA was listed. According to the page from the Nintendo Power issue, in this game you fish in different areas of a map where you either catch small fish or larger fish, which there are 140 variations of. The game was reportedly complemented by classical music while you fish. A prominent fish named the Kraken, who is featured on artwork and photos for the game, is a gigantic red dragon-like fish who is described as difficult to catch. Most of this information is seemingly described for the Wii version of the game. The DS version of the game has barely any documentation, but is described as similar to the Wii version while using the stylus for controls. No builds of the games have surfaced as of now, however, some screenshots and a short gameplay video for the Wii version exist. A single screenshot exists for the DS version. Unidentified Coca-Cola DSi. User Toasterberry on r/game collecting made a post 3 years ago talking about a really strange DSi he bought on eBay. His statement goes as follows.
I bought this DSi from a random Japanese store on eBay in early 2019. To this day, I still have not been able to identify it or find any information on it. As far as I'm aware, it may be the only one to exist. There's an old listing for a pin found with the same logo, but I still don't know where the logo is from. Any info or help with the search, or getting it shown to someone who might know anything is greatly appreciated.
In the comments, users trying to help stated that MD seen on the pin is short for merchandiser. If this is the case, the Japanese text would roughly translate to National Vendor Merchandiser Championship. So it's possible that this Coca-Cola DSi console was some sort of corporate giveaway or internal prize rather than a public contest. The fact that the pin says 2007 and the DSi says 2008 could mean that this was a yearly conference that had offered different prizes each year. The mystery behind this unidentified console has yet to be solved, and I know this technically isn't lost media, but the whole situation was too cool to pass up talking about it. If any of you have any additional info or insight to share, drop it in the comments. Garfield Bound for Home. In October of 2005, amidst the hype of the upcoming live-action Garfield film, Paws Inc. released a 3-disc box set containing 9 of the animated Garfield TV specials. Inside the box set was a pamphlet advertising an upcoming DS game, simply entitled Garfield Bound for Home, slating it for a release in the holidays of 2005. However, this game never released and very little information is known about it. The game was to be published by Game Factory, who also published other Garfield handheld titles, and developed by Humansoft. The plot has been described as following a gang of street cats invading Garfield's home, posing as Garfield himself. This gang's goal is to make John, Garfield's owner, have to constantly purchase food for them to eventually make him go poor so they can take over the house for themselves. Currently, no footage or even screenshots of the game exist online, as the game was never released. All that's available is the game's box art printed on a pamphlet advertising the game. Carving Tech Demo. Carving is another 2004 tech demo which, in my opinion, is the weirdest of them all. It takes place in outer space, where you are given the option to carve 4 different cylindrical items into whatever kind of design you'd like. This demo's goal was to display how the interactive touchscreen worked. There was very little footage of this demo on the internet, and this was never turned into a full game. However, if I did have to take a guess, I'd say that this carving thing was reused for the 3DS game Rusty's Real Deal Baseball, as that title has a minigame where you can carve a baseball bat. McDonald's ECDP Canadian version. The McDonald's ECDP for Nintendo DS was a specialized training application used in Japan as part of the company's employee development program. Distributed to specific McDonald's locations, it allowed part-time and new employees to complete interactive training modules, quizzes, and operational lessons directly on an exclusive McDonald's DSi. The software, however, was not sold to the public and for a while was considered lost media. However, it was found in recent years and released to the public. And as I stated before, the McDonald's eCrew development program was only ever available in Japan. Or well, that may not be the case. Supposedly, on a video about the program, a comment noted that an English and Canadian version had been tested in Laval, Quebec. The comment reads, "Apparently, there was a testing in Longueuil, Quebec as well. There were in fact a French and English version of the game, as well as a bonus task in which you can create poutine, a popular dish in Canada involving fries, cheese, and gravy." The fact that this game apparently included poutine is important. Canadian McDonald's added poutine to their menus nationwide in 2013. This suggests that the Canadian version would have been developed in 2012 to 2013, so Canadians outside of Quebec could learn the new recipe. The search for this lost version of the game went on from 2020 to early 2021, where the forum regarding it has been inactive since. It's unknown if this game ever existed, but if it did, it's certainly lost. This is a very easy thing to lie about, but I don't know, I feel like this maybe could have existed. I mean, before the game was popularized, people thought the original McDonald's ECDP game was fake. Tank Assault. Tank Assault was a cancelled third-person shooter developed by Wicked Witch Softwares for the Nintendo DS. It was intended to be an expanded handheld adaptation of the studio's mobile title of the same name, with the team actively seeking a publisher to bring it to the DS market. To showcase its potential, Wicked Witch created a fully playable demo using their proprietary 3D engine. This was quite the impressive technical feat given the DS's hardware limitations. The game aimed to deliver a surprisingly ambitious modern military experience on a handheld, drawing inspiration from major shooters such as Battlefield 2, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, Counter-Strike, and Operation Flashpoint Cold War Crisis. According to developers, Tank Assault was envisioned as a flexible project that could range from an arcade-style first-person shooter to a more tactical combat simulator. Planned features included local and online multiplayer modes, cooperative missions against AI-controlled soldiers and vehicles, and many different maps and battlefields. Despite the strong technical demo, Tank Assault never found a publisher and was ultimately cancelled. Matchman. Matchman was a cancelled run-and-gun side-scrolling shooter developed in 2008 by TFH Co. Limited. It was originally set to be published worldwide by Lexicon Entertainment for the DS, Wii, and PlayStation 3. At a time when indie games were far less common on major consoles, journalists were surprised by its deliberately minimalist presentation. The game featured entirely hand-drawn, black-and-white scribble graphics styled like an old comic strip. According to press materials, Matchman combined classic Fairytale influences with humorous writing and unconventional gameplay mechanics. Rather than simply defeating bosses with weapons, players would sometimes dispatch enemies in creative ways, such as feeding an evil bird named Baba Yaga apples until it burst. One standout feature was Commuter Mode, which allowed the game to be played one-handed. This is a really unusual design choice, I think aimed at handheld players who were using public transport, as suggested by the name. I honestly have no clue why this game in specific would need a mode like this, but it's cool nonetheless. Even though development was seemingly going smoothly, Lexicon Entertainment collapsed in 2008 and dropped the project before release. In 2009, startup publisher Mamba Games re-announced Matchman with plans for a global Nintendo DS debut followed by Wii and PS3 versions, but the game ultimately vanished without explanation. It remains unknown whether development was ever finished, and in later years, Mamba Games itself became involved in controversy over unpaid developers. Matchman was never released in any form, making it a fully lost title. Nintendo Arcade DS games. Nintendo Arcade was a website developed and published by Nintendo, which hosted online Adobe Flash games made to promote various Nintendo franchises. In total, 38 games were published on the website between 2006 and 2007, before the website was taken down. In this time period, all of the games were available to be played online via the website, but since the website was taken down, attempting to access it nowadays via its original URL leads to a 404 error. Many of the games which were once available on the site have been saved to the Wayback Machine, however, some still remain unarchived, all of which were Flash games related to DS titles. These lost games include Yoshi's Island DS Yoshi's Egg Toss, Wario Master of Disguise Trivia, Pokemon Ranger Learn to Use the Capture Styler, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, Nintendogs Dalmatian and Friends Trivia, Kirby Squeak Squad Speedy Tea Time, Children of Mana Gem Challenge, Magical Star Sign Trivia, Star Fox Command, Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam, and New Super Mario Bros. 1-Up Hunt. Super Pac-Man Pinball. Super Pac-Man Pinball was a plain sequel to Pac-Man Pinball Advance on the GBA, developed by Zen Studios. The game was set to release on the DS in 2005, but was cancelled for unknown reasons. The game was reported on by IGN on May 9th of 2005, seemingly days after the original had come out, but then was quickly announced it had been cancelled. Despite IGN's announcement of its cancellation, the game was still announced in Nintendo Power in its 192nd issue, showcasing screenshots and announcing the game would be released in April of 2006. Because it is on this Iceberg chart, you'd probably already assume the game did not release in April of 2006 and has become lost media. Balloon Trip Demo. Another 2004 DS tech demo was called Balloon Trip, which took inspiration from the SNES game Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. It was titled Balloon Trip, named after the mode from the NES game Balloon Fight. The tech demo's positive reception later inspired the developers of Yoshi Touch and Go to cancel the Nintendo GameCube version of the game and make the demo's concepts into a full game for the DS. In this demo, Baby Mario is being carried by a stork until Kamek knocks him away. Baby Mario drifts towards the ground, kept afloat by 3 balloons. Touching an enemy pops a balloon, and if all 3 balloons are popped, Baby Mario is abducted by Kamek. The stylus is used to draw clouds that direct Baby Mario to safety, and to draw circles around enemies, turning them into coins. The goal of the game is to collect as many coins as possible to achieve a high score. Most of the demo's concepts were used in the officially released DS game Yoshi Touch and Go, which came out in 2005, however the original demo has never resurfaced. LEGO Racers the video game. LEGO Racers the video game was a cancelled racing title quietly advertised in late 2008 on LEGO set packaging before it was ever officially announced. The ads appeared on boxes for LEGO Racers sets, promoting the mysterious game without screenshots, a developer credit, or even confirmed platforms. This led to widespread speculation, with some fans initially confusing it with the unrelated online title LEGO Racers Challenge by NetDevil. At the time, several other unannounced LEGO games were also teased on set boxes, including LEGO Space the video game and LEGO Castle the video game. Those projects, along with LEGO Pirates the video game, were eventually consolidated into LEGO Battles after packaging had already gone to print. However, LEGO Racers was simply never clarified, and no official announcement or follow-up ever came from LEGO or its publishing partners, leaving it in development limbo for years. In 2013, the mystery deepened when a developer from Firebrand Games shared portfolio materials confirming he had worked on this unreleased game. The materials included rendered vehicle models, an animated minifigure, and 2 in-game screenshots. Although the developer stated the game was intended for the DS, the screenshots were in a 6040 by 456 resolution, which is more typical of a Wii game. These images also displayed visual graphics that were beyond what the DS could normally handle. Given Firebrand's history of developing parallel DS and Wii versions of racing titles, it is widely believed that LEGO Racers was planned for both platforms before being cancelled, but who really knows for sure. Cartoon Network Battle Crashers. Cartoon Network Battle Crashers is a crossover beat-em-up game featuring characters from 6 Cartoon Network shows, those being Steven Universe, Uncle Grandpa, The Amazing World of Gumball, Clarence, Regular Show, and Adventure Time. The game was released in 2016 for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and 3DS. So now you may be wondering, if this game came out in 2016, why is it in a Nintendo DS Lost Media video? Well, on the game's development studio's website, there is a very grainy, low-quality image of a DS version's box art shown alongside the box arts for the other, released versions of the game. This is the only proof of existence for a DS port, but it does come straight from the source, so they at least had to have considered making this at one point. Now, all I'm wondering is, why? Why would they even consider making a DS version of a game in 2016? This was 12 years after the DS had released and was in its prime, so it's just very odd. Ninja Jajimaru-kun. Ninja Jajimaru-kun Pen wa Ken Yorimo Kyoshi de Gozaru was going to be a DS remake of the original Famicom action game with the same name from 1985. It seems that something went wrong during the development of the DS remake, and it was cancelled as reported in Famitsu magazine. Jaleco, the studio behind the game's development, was then closed down because of increasing competition in the video game market. There are some images of this DS remake that surfaced, making them the only surviving media regarding this cancelled game. Rhythm Heaven Visualizer. Rhythm Heaven Visualizer was an official iTunes visualizer for the DS rhythm game Rhythm Heaven, released by Nintendo in 2008. In May of 2009, Nintendo hosted this music visualizer for Mac OS X, Windows Vista, and Windows XP on the official Rhythm Heaven website. On January 3rd of 2016, Nintendo took down the website along with the download for the visualizer. This visualizer was only ever available on the United States website. While trying to visit on the Wayback Machine, it failed to redirect to proper links, and the Japanese website for the game, which is still up and running, does not have a download and only hosts wallpapers. The only evidence of this visualizer's existence was several news articles and a video on Vimeo. People tried emailing Christopher Knight, who was the guy on Vimeo that posted a video of this, but he did not have the visualizer anymore. As of December 1st, 2020, however, a working download and version of the Rhythm Heaven visualizer was found by Reddit user Minus Animations, making this a piece of found lost media. Pokemon Pinball. Among the many unreleased projects uncovered in the big 2020 Nintendo Giga Leak was evidence that Nintendo once planned a Pokemon Pinball sequel for the DS. The Pokemon Pinball series had previously seen two entries, Pokemon Pinball on Game Boy Color and Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire on GBA, but no official successor ever appeared on the DS. According to the leak, development of a DS Pokemon Pinball was assigned to Fuse, a studio known for titles like Mario Pinball Land and Metroid Prime Pinball. Internal documents from the Giga Leak indicate that the DS project was planned for around 2006, the same era as Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, and would have included Wi-Fi support, potentially making it one of the first Pokemon Pinball games with online functionality. Although very little actual game data, such as a playable build, appeared in the Giga Leak, the internal listings themselves confirmed the project's existence. Initial D EX. Initial D is a popular street racing manga and anime series written and illustrated by Shuichi Shigeno from 1995 to 2013. The story focuses on illegal street racing, where all of the action is concentrated in the mountain passes and rarely in cities or urban areas. Initial D is also known for the various video and arcade games developed by Sega. However, one of the biggest rumors at its time was that there was a planned Nintendo DS game in the works by Sega. The game was reportedly called Initial D EX. It was first talked about when the game was supposedly leaked on the Sega of America website on accident, before screenshots of the supposed game were found on the Sega Rosso's website before being swiftly deleted. Many sites from before mostly believed about this game's existence because of the screenshots. However, on June 13th of 2021, user Emeko on the Initial D subreddit made a post compiling evidence that this game never existed. They first went from least concrete, like how the Sega of America screenshot of the game was faked, and then they also proved that the in-game screenshots from Sega was just a really low-quality version of a screenshot from the PS1 Initial D game. At the end of the post, they compiled the most concrete evidence, being that they contacted Kenji Sasaki, a former Sega employee and producer of Initial D games. When asked, Kenji responded immediately with confirmation that there was never a Nintendo DS title in the works. So, this game was once considered lost media, but now it's confirmed that this was a fake game that was made up for whatever reason. Dementium 2. Dementium 2 is the FPS developed by Renegade Kid and released for the DS in 2010. However, footage was released in 2012 that shows a early tech demo version of the game. This early footage is low-key terrifying, but I love the aesthetic. I'm a fan of whatever this is. Anyways, this tech demo version has not been released to the public, and all that exists regarding this version of the game is this footage and some screenshots. Hansel DS Unit Learning. Hansel DS Unit Learning was an unreleased educational title planned exclusively for the Nintendo DS market in Korea, apparently developed in the mid-2000s to teach children academic or problem-solving skills. Evidence of the game's existence comes from archived Korean software lists. All of the games on this list have no existing footage, ROM dump, and all that's really known about them is that they existed at one point and were in development. At the time, educational software for the DS, especially in non-Western regions, was fairly common, including Korean titles and dictionary tools such as Touch Dictionary, which was released exclusively in South Korea and allowed users to translate between languages using the DS touchscreen. The Hansel project seemed to have been part of this educational trend, but tailored to local curriculums or corporate stakeholders, possibly backed by Hansel Education Brands, a major Korean learning company that produced preschool and elementary learning materials outside of video games. On an obscure Korean website, a user actually found the game's cover art, but apart from this, there's no other media regarding this game that still exists on the internet today. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon website. When Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Blue Rescue Team launched in 2005 and 2006, they were accompanied by an official promotional website built entirely on Adobe Flash. The site was divided into 6 interactive sections: Rescue Team 101, Rescue Heroes, Rescue Missions, The Story, Pokemon Square, and Fun Stuff. Like many mid-2000s game microsites, it featured animated menus, interactive activities, and downloadable content designed to immerse visitors in the world of the game. However, when Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Darkness were released, the original Rescue Team website was overhauled and replaced to promote the newer titles. As a result, most of the original Flash content was never properly archived. The US and Japanese versions of the site are effectively lost because of their SWF files not being preserved, meaning they no longer load in the Wayback Machine. There was also a very obscure South Korean version of the website which hosted a promotional demo game called Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Gold Rescue Team Challenge the Gold Rank, and this demo is completely lost as of 2026. Alright, back to the website. The only partially accessible version today is the Australian site via web archives, but even then, only certain parts of the website still work. Denshi Maid Techo Koi no Iroha. Denshi Maid Techo Koi no Iroha was a cancelled life simulation and day organizer hybrid announced by SNK Playmore at the 2006 Tokyo Game Show. It was planned for the DS alongside other titles such as Doki Doki Majo Shinpan, Metal Slug 7, and SNK vs Capcom Card Fighters Clash. Unlike those releases, however, Denshi Maid Techo never made it to the market. The game centered on Iroha, a character from Samurai Shodown 6, reimagined here as a virtual assistant that players would raise similarly to a Tamagotchi. The concept had players educate and interact with a digital Iroha who would gradually learn about the modern world, and help manage the player's daily schedule. I think because of its very unusual concept, the project was quietly cancelled, and no known build has ever surfaced. Pocoyo on the Go. Pocoyo on the Go is an unpublished video game about Pocoyo that was discovered in a slideshow made by Zinkia, the studio behind the Pocoyo cartoon. It was made for the Nintendo DS and planned for release in 2010, and that's all I can really tell you. There is no gameplay footage of the title, and the only existing media regarding the game is a super grainy picture of the game's box art. Special Effects. Special Effects is a super obscure Nintendo DS tech demo that was showcased at E3 2004. This demo lets you do exactly what the title suggests, play with special effects. You can move around various colored blocks, draw on and explode these reactive tiles. There was a little visualizer thing on the top screen, and that's about it. There's very little footage of this tech demo on the internet, and there seems to be no way to access this demo nowadays. Gravity Zero Racing. Gravity Zero Racing is a cancelled futuristic racing game that was said to be published by Midas Interactive. It was basically just an F-Zero clone for the DS. The game was planned to be released sometime in 2008, as there was actually a product page posted to Amazon UK, but in the end, it vanished without any official statement. Only a handful of screenshots remain on the internet, as well as the game's box art seen from the Amazon listing. Space Agency. Space Agency is a cancelled action RPG planned for the DS that was being developed by Audio Inc., the same people behind Contact and Sakura Note. A video of the game was uploaded to YouTube by the dev team in 2009, but sadly the project never found any publisher, probably because the other Audio Inc. titles performed very poorly. Inside of this game, the player would control a new member of the Space Agency, an organization created in order to defend planets from the space pirates. There's very little info about this game out there, as the only proof of the game's existence is from the dev team's YouTube video. How I Spent My Summer Vacation. How I Spent My Summer Vacation is a cancelled horror action game that was developed by Santa Cruz Games for the DS and PC. In the game, players would have taken on the role of a little girl named Joanne, armed with a chainsaw to take down zombies that invaded the place she was spending the summer. Only a playable demo was created before How I Spent My Summer Vacation was cancelled, possibly because they couldn't find any publisher interest in the project. All that remains are a few screenshots. Half-Elf Tentacle Assault. Quick disclaimer, there is mentions of sexual assault in this segment, so if that bothers you, I would skip ahead to the next entry. Alright. Half-Elf Tentacle Assault was an unofficial, adult-oriented title developed by a Japanese indie group called Team DSX for the DS around 2008. The game was effectively cancelled before it could be distributed. This was an erotic visual novel-style project featuring half-elf characters and tentacle-themed adult content, essentially pornography, and it gained attention because it was advertised as one of the first games of this nature made specifically for the DS. It was reportedly playable with the touchscreen and stylus, and it had you using tentacles to... It's a very disturbing game in concept. The distribution of this game was set up quite unusually. Basically, the developers planned to sell the ROM on CD at Comiket, Japan's massive indie game convention, so buyers could transfer it onto DS Flash cartridges rather than through traditional retail channels. However, organizers rescinded Team DSX's booth participation shortly before the event, likely due to concerns about Nintendo's stance on unlicensed DS software and explicit content, effectively blocking the game's planned release. Hey everybody, hope you all enjoyed. Decided to kind of go back to my roots with this video. I mean, I haven't done a Lost Media Iceberg in a hot minute. If you like this video, make sure to show some love by subscribing or dropping a comment. Before I head out, I want to quickly thank all of my channel members. Amory316, Inku number 3, Carson2004, Ali Elman, Gymnos2, Jeff Schlegg, Zeta Watson, Dimitri Cohen, Saris Ellen, Frosty YT, Justin P, A2L5YT, Dylan Osborne, and Kayla Wardlaw. Thank you all so much for watching, thanks for supporting, I'll see you all soon, goodbye.